I went for a walk with my grandma before she got dementia some years ago. We got so far up on the oil line when all of a sudden, we heard the most eerie screaming like cats fighting. We didn't go up the oil line that day, we turned around and went back to the house. We never saw anything, though it sounded like it was on the edge of the woods. The oil line is just a clearing, with forest on each side of it, running through fields and streams, and through patches of brush. Though there were other things that went on the oil line. A large slow-moving triangle-shaped craft hovered over the oil line one night. My grandpa said it was a UFO, it had a lot of circular lights on the bottom, and it was very loud, and it crept slowly over the hill and oil line. It was gone after a while. Finally we had peace. There have been several things going on my grandparents' farm, though most of them, I doubt anyone would believe. One day as I walked down to my grandparents' house, I checked the house, and it seemed they were gone that day. It was a nice road to walk on down there. And the fields had been mowed a while ago, but when I started to go home, something floated over the field. It was a silver cigar-shaped craft. It hovered over the field for what seemed like several minutes. It silently hovered in place, and I stared at it. Finally it flew off. I have to admit Mork Ridge plays tricks on you. Sometimes I would see giant dogs by the roads. And one day the coyotes were hollering up on the oil line. The strange thing was, it was during the day, and they sounded too close. Another night they sounded like they were outside the trailer. And they kept my parents up all night. Sometimes I think something strange is going on. One winter something stared in the window of my room. It is pretty far off the ground to see over the air conditioner. It would have had to be about 7 foot tall. All that was left in the snow and ice that morning were some footprints that looked like they belonged to a large dog. I told you my first and second meeting with Sasquatch. After the second meeting, we moved about 10 miles away to my grandfather's farm. 2.5 years have passed for my most terrifying, and up-close encounter. Summer 1985 I graduated high school. And I was preparing to head off to college. My mother had already taken a job about 50 miles away. I stayed at home during the work week. I had the place to myself. Daytime temps in the mountains of North Carolina reached the 80s. But at night it would cool off to around the 50s. Lacking air conditioning, I would open the window at the head of my bed, and allow the cool night air to flow through the window screen. After dropping my girlfriend off at her house, I drove home. Proceeded to the den and kicked my feet up on the couch, and turned on the TV. The couch is about 5 feet away from the front door, and you could see the twilight and moonlight through the front door's window. It was a small window, maybe 24 inches long and 6 inches wide. They ran from the top of the 7-foot door, down to about 5-foot level. It was just enough that you could look out and see who's out the door. Oh my god, back in 1985 we had about 3 channels on TV. And at 11 p.m. the news came on all channels. So I got up and turned the TV off, grabbed my guitar and picked a bit. I did not play for long, when I got that feeling I was being watched. I sat the guitar down and just listened. We had a small 12-foot by 12-foot porch at the front door. I could hear the porch creaking. A brand new porch built with treated 2x6s. Every hair on my neck stood at attention. Then I looked toward the door window. It was solid black, no moonlight passing by, not even at the top. Something was blocking the window. Then the door of the doorknob began to jiggle. I shouted, "Who's there?" No sound. At that moment I heard Papa's dogs coming, barking like crazy. I heard the entire porch screeched, loud, and the light came on through the window. The dogs came and passed, barking the entire time. Whatever it was, didn't like dogs. I grabbed my .357 Glock, and stood guard all night. I never left the couch until daylight morning came. We had a softball tournament at our local field, and I got home right after dark. I never turned on the TV or any lights. I sat down on the couch, with the .357, and waited. Around midnight, I heard the porch squeaking. This time I heard the heavy footsteps. I watched the window turn black again. Again it grabbed the doorknob, jiggle, jiggle. I corked the single action, pointed out the door and yelled, "I'll blow you to hell." This thing let out a scream straight from hell. It hit the side of the house, still screaming. When it stopped, I heard the dogs coming once again. Scared, I stayed on the couch. Again that night, somewhere through the night I dozed off. I awoke to the door coming open. I damn near shot my grandfather. It was daylight, and he wanted to know if I had been drinking the night before, and hit the porch in my Jeep, and how in the hell I busted the siding off the outside. While beside the door, I walked outside with them. The 12-foot by 12-foot porch was knocked off its pillars, and there was an arm print embedded beside the door, as big as my leg at 20 inches long. I told my grandfather what happened. At that time he did not believe me. He said, "You came in drunk, ran over the porch, you must have been drunk. You must have beat the siding with your baseball bat." We spent the day making repairs. Night number 3 comes around. "Oh, are you kidding me? All the way down broken slope? No way. Alright, let's see if I can pull this off." 3 comes around and my mother had returned home from work, and I listened to a speech about drinking, and having a temper, and hitting the house with a bat. She proceeded to turn on the TV. I know she would watch the news too. So I went to my room, opened the window for some cool night air, turned up the lights and called my girlfriend on the phone. I had my own phone, and my mother had a separate line. My girlfriend and I chatted like we were 18-year-olds. Then my life changed forever. A putrid smell of animal piss and death filled my room. I could hear heavy footsteps, two-legged footsteps. I told Kelly of the smell. She laughed, and said, "Go on." I said, "No, I have smelled this before. I can hear it walking less than 24 inches from my head." I heard the breathing: inhale 15 seconds, exhale with low growl, 15 seconds long. Long, slow, and deep. I freaked out. I told Kelly what was happening. At first she joked and said, "No way." I told her I was going to shoot the screen. This damn thing was directly beside me. This damn thing was blowing its breath on me. I have never been so scared. So you couldn't remember what happened. I remember trying to get the gun, but in my head something was saying, "It won't work. It won't hurt, don't do it." I remember crying in fear, and telling Kelly monsters were right beside me, and his breathing got louder and deeper, and the stench made me sick. I hear and then I see a huge hand in my screen, push the screen in. I heard the dogs barking this time. The barking was pure fear, just high-pitched yelps. Then the cry of a dog in pain. The sound of a shotgun being fired in the blackberry bushes, and the grapevines being torn down. The support timbers of the vine snapping like twigs, a blood-curdling yell fading away, and then the voice: "My grandfather was out of my window." Dick, are you alright? Kelly hung up and called my mother. And Mom called Papa. Kelly had also heard the breathing, and growling, and the fear in my voice. She knew something wasn't right. My grandfather put a little buckshot in the quote, "bear," end quote, and it ran off. The next day I went with my grandfather to inspect the grapevines. It looked like a tank had rolled through. But there in the middle of the garden, was a 20-inch, perfect 5-toed footprint. 9-foot strides between each step. Pap looked me and said, "Go get the shovel. And get these things covered up for your grandmother." After cleaning up the garden footprints, I went to my bedroom window and there, imprinted on my screen, was a handprint. 3 times the size of mine. I can only imagine the force required to bend the screen and leave the perfect handprint. My grandmother said we would never speak of it again. But I needed to get it gone. This is the 3rd time it has come to you. You remember the huge handprints, and destruction of my great apple sawmill, 5 years earlier, and the dead steer. The night it followed me home. 4 years back you have done something to it. You need to go stay with your sister until college starts. I was more than happy to oblige. It would be 25 years before I'd have interaction with it again. A few years back my old girlfriend and I spoke at the reunion. She said, "You remember that night Bigfoot came to your window?" Yeah, I sure do. And that's all we ever said about it. Have a good day and God bless. I was raised on a cattle ranch in the Sierra Nevada foothills, in Colma, where gold was discovered in 1849. My father was a World War II vet, who fought in 2 Burma jungles. His cattle partner was like a grandfather to me. He fought hand to hand, in the trenches in France. In World War I. Before I could go hunting and fishing with them, I had to learn to track and backtrack. Also swim with all my clothes on, and boots on. They had 17 square miles of leased mountain pasture up in Rockbound, that went to Meeks Bay, at Lake Tahoe, where they ran cattle each summer back from 1930 to 1960, they were what we called real men. My first sighting was in 1968. We were hiking into Star Lake, which overlooks Tahoe on Memorial Day weekend. There's a lot of snow patches on the ground still. We came across some bare footprints in the snow. Who in the right mind would be up here in their bare feet? My dad said it must be hippies hiding out from the Vietnam War. Well, he was one big son of a bitch. One set was 60 inches, and the other 8. We could not match their strides. Once at the lake, I wanted to fish, but my dad said I should stay in this area to fish. My feet were wet, and there were glaciers running down into the lake, and was too dangerous. So I fished on the sunny side. They went around the lake. Before long, I was bored, and started skipping rocks, and rolling big rocks down the canyon to see if any deer run out. I looked back, and seen my pole bobbing. I had to run for it. That's when I seen two hippies walking on the other side. As they got to the glacier, I yelled out. My dad said don't go there, and the big one picked up the little one, and went across it on a 45-degree angle, uphill. Before long my dad was back, and asked if I'd crossed the slide, and was rolling boulders down to the lake. I told him the big and little hippies must have rolled rocks. At first he thought I was lying, so he walked over, and I showed him the tracks where they crossed the glacier. Them crazy sons of bitches. Then we seen them way up the mountain. We got our 10 by 50 binoculars out and watched them go straight up. Dad said they are going fast for being barefoot. I told him they are wearing fur coats and pants, like Daniel Boone would. Fred walked up and said, they're hermits that would hide out in the mountains. They would always steal young calves. My next sighting was in 1987, at the Crystal Basin area of El Dorado County, California. My wife, my son, and I were at Ice House Lake fishing. On the road out 100 feet in front of us, a young man walked out in the crossroad. When he sees us, he dropped on all fours and looked straight at us. I said, look, it's a monkey boy. I floored it, and was out of the Jeep, running after him. I got to the edge of the road. We went into the brush in no time. The chivvy was still rolling, and my wife was screaming at me to get back in. I looked back at her in my car and said, like, where did it go? When I turned back, looking for him, that's when I saw him going over the top of the ridge, 250 yards away. My mouth dropped open with disbelief. Then I smelled something dead and rotten. We all did. Was he feeding on a dead deer carcass? My wife said. So I looked in the brush, and could not find anything dead. We sat there in the road talking about what we had seen for 15 minutes. Monkey Boy's hair was sparse, and you could see more skin than hair, and you could tell he was wild in his eyes. We stopped at the bar restaurant a mile away. They are friends of mine, and we're gonna tell them what we just experienced. Once we sat down, neither said a word, so they asked what was wrong. I just shook my head because they didn't want to be laughed at. In fact, we never spoke of it again. Now she is my ex-wife. Now I want to ask her what she remembers of that day. It's a day I'll never forget. When I close my eyes, it's like yesterday. I sent my first Bigfoot sighting in yesterday. I'm a cat skinner from 1984 to 1994. I was hired with my Caterpillar D8H with Ripper by Butler Timber to build 10 miles of logging road and helicopter pads for staging logs up in the Crystal Basin by Slick Rock. I punched a road in about 7 miles from Picket Pin Road. Deer season just opened, so it was mid-September. I started at 5 o'clock, servicing my dozer. I could hear someone splitting wood. I thought, who'd be up ahead of me, splitting wood this early? There were no tire tracks over mine from yesterday. I was planning on getting off earlier today, so I could hunt till dark. Well, the sun was coming up and I was pushing muck from the cut downhill to build up a turnout for trucks to pass. That feeling of someone was watching me came over me. Then someone yelled, so I shut the cat off and yelled, "Yo, back," but no answer back. So I fired it back up. As it started to back up, something yelled again. So back to the top of the cut, and shut off the cat, and yelled back, "Yo, I'm up here. Where are you? Who are you? And don't get downhill of me, I might roll a boulder on you." No one answered me, so I went back to work. Way up on the ridge, I could see something standing out on a rock outcropping. I waved my hat at them, but they never waved back. At first, I thought it was the man that hired me, so I kicked it into second gear. When the dust cleared, no one was on the rocks. That's weird. If he wants to talk to me, he would have to come to me. Why do I keep feeling like someone's watching me? Where are they? I kept looking around. I felt in danger for some reason. So I went back to my truck, and grabbed my Browning 7 mag, and carry it on the cat with me the rest of the day. 2:30 came, and I worked my way back to my truck. I parked it off to the side, in low ground cover on the side hill so the fuel would not get hot, and run out of my 100-gallon tank. But when I got to my F250 4x4, with over a ton of fuel, tools and oil in it, my truck had been pushed sideways, and a big berm of dirt was against my tire. I was pissed off. Who's been screwing with my truck? When I caught up with the skidder operator, I chewed him out, and when he finally got a word in, and he said he was nowhere close to my truck, he asked me if he and the choker setter could catch a ride out with me. Yes, it would be around dark that I was going hunting. So we met up just after dark, and started down the mountain. He was telling me that boss never came around that day. As we went around the turn, there was a manzanita brush spread across the road. I jammed on the brakes, but it was too late then. My left front tire blew out. So I go down under my truck, in 8 inches of powdered dust, and got my spare tire out from underneath my truck. The 2 guys jacked it up, we just got the flat off, when something uttered a blood-curdling scream that lasted 30 seconds. What the F was that? That's when it sounded like wood splitting, or someone with a big baseball bat hitting wood all around us. We about shit our pants. I was shaking so bad, I could not get the lug nuts on. I think I got 3 out of 8 on. The other 2 were in my truck yelling at me to get in. I drove the truck off the jack, and left my flat tire and jack there. We were going so fast that I was doing brodies around every turn. I have never been so shook up in my life. I took off the next day, and so did they. Monday, I went back, and my tire and my jack were gone. Later that day, a pickup came flying by me. I could see the life flight helicopter landing down the road. I talked to the choker setter, announced what happened. He told me that out of nowhere, a bald-faced hornet nest hit the skidder's cab, and he was attacked, and went into analytic shock. He also said that he was on open ground, and it came out of nowhere. That next day, I moved my cat 2 feet, and the track came off the rails. I had busted, and a pad was missing. One was broken in half. I finished that weekend. I got hauled back to Placerville on Monday. 2 years later, I was in Southern Oregon, steelhead fishing with my buddy. I was riding shotgun as we crossed a bridge in the Applegate River. I looked down the river to see if anyone was fishing. I saw a Bigfoot standing on the bank. I told my buddy to stop the truck and "There's a Bigfoot down there." They started laughing at me, so I never spoke of it again. Now I know this email is long, and my grammar not well, but I can skin a buck and run a trout line. I'll survive.